Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. And today we have a treat. Isabel Gaila Barbuto is here to talk about forgive, love, and start life anew. Isabel calls herself a mental wellness coach, with well over 400 hours of professional coaching services provided annually. She's decided to devote her life to teaching of the principles by forgoing the diagnoses of disorders as a psychologist, despite her extensive clinical doctoral level training in psychology, as well as business, hypnotherapy, meditation, yoga, nutrition, and energy medicine. Today, she teaches what she would learn and simply desires to teach only love now, especially through the practice of forgiveness from illusions of past and future projections. Oh my goodness, such a pot of gold here. Isabel, welcome. The show is all yours.
Well, it's all us together. And, I really am going to speak from exactly what I personally need to learn. That's been probably why I really wanted the title and the headline to be forgiveness. Forgive, love, and start life anew. And I'm actually quoting Sid Banks from, his very well-known book, The Missing Link. And so if you want to follow along, I'm not going to go chapter or page by page, but I am starting on page 117, and it's a chapter that stands out to me, and it's very rich, and it also sort of just, I think, is the key to that happy feeling, that place of just stillness and joy. And so I'd like to, initially offer maybe some little factoids and just back it up a bit. Let's set the table and let's just, hit the ground running. But if anything I'm saying doesn't sit well, or you'd like to stop me, please do at any time. But I'll talk for a while, and then I'll slow down, and then maybe ask if there's any questions. And if there's not, I'll keep going. I could talk about this for hours, because it's really what I've been learning and what I would love to share out loud. So I guess as I begin, that term forgiveness is a very common word we use, but I think the way we've applied it for, I'll call it centuries of human existence, maybe is not the way that this approach that, let's say, Sid Banks and other wisdom writers and mystics have spoken about over the centuries. And so I'd just like to kind of bring it up and maybe highlight how it might be used, and maybe a new understanding. An understanding, though, that opens our hearts, our capacity to truly experience that happy feeling, that love, that presence. And that's what also offers us a whole new second chance, a life to live, with less suffering, not the needless suffering, and to have an experience of this human life in a new way. So I'll just go back just a little bit in the history of it. Most of us have known, or perhaps grown up in our classical conditioning, that forgiveness was something that we might have, been offered in maybe one of these 5 ways. And so I'll kind of highlight the ways that we might have learned it. The first way, I call it sort of being sort of lordy or over someone. There's a concept of forgiveness is for the person who's better, to offer a release or a judgment on someone who's baser. That's a way of saying it. Another option, the second way maybe some of us had learned, was it's a shared self-condemnation. We're all in this group of being, bad, unforgivable people, and we're kind of bad. We've done something sinful. Another way that sometimes forgiveness has been understood, perhaps in our learned, just our histories and cultures, is from an idea of, well, if I'm saintly, I'll be meek. I'll be a martyr, and I'll people please, and I'll smile even when I hurt, and I'll just forgive you by being, in a sense, better. Another way, a fourth way is, in a sense, being um, accepting the guilt. Yeah, I'm guilty, and I deserve to suffer. I deserve to take this pain. And so you're literally accepting and, in a sense, buying into that concept. And then a fifth way that, I'll stop here. I think I could go for a while, but a fifth way is sort of the bargaining. It's more so a reciprocity, which says, okay, if you pay about this amount or you serve this much time, then there will be forgiveness. So you're in a sense putting yourself into some type of bondage or contractual agreement, which feels somewhat like an indentured kind of slave. In a sense, it's not a pleasant feeling. And so I'm offering here perhaps a different perspective, one that I really resonate with, what I pick up from reading Sid's works, is that forgiveness has nothing to do with perceiving the other person having done something wrong. Forgiving in this particular light would be something that I forgive myself for the misappropriation, the misuse of that beautiful creative energy we have of thought. That's the missing link. That is that beautiful, formless connection that when we start to have this, I call it awakening, or just this beautiful desire to connect to something that feels good, our eyes start to see a new possibility that forgiveness has nothing to do with holding on to the past, keeping track, analyzing, uh, just keeping a record of things done in the past. And that's particularly why I chose to no longer invest in the diagnosing of things that were wrong with people. And so from moving into this place of then forgiveness is more so me forgiving myself for the misappropriation, the misuse of my own creative, gorgeous ability to think. I'm able more than to love without the blocks, the hindrances to this gorgeous ability to shower, share that connection, that love, that light, that happiness. And people pick up on that. I'm looking at just some ideas. The way that maybe Sid defined ego, he said it was the image of our self-importance, and that image of self-importance, though, is sometimes something that gets in our way because we create an image, or we have to keep maintaining and doing something in order to feel safe or invulnerable, and then we're afraid of being vulnerable when we're not, and as a result we tend to pick up very powerful ways to in a sense block that love or that connection. um, to give them a deeper idea too of that powerful powerful gift we have of thought, I'm going to sort of set the table as well with a little piece called quantum physics. And so forgive me if this sounds a little nerdy, but I think it just it helps sort of to look at what are we doing as humans and what can we do. So quantum physics pretty much operates off the premise that our expectations as the observer can actually determine the outcomes of certain experiments, in that we actually have the ability to change something when we observe it. So in the ideas of, and I'm not a physics expert, but I do have some basic understandings that waves actually turn to particles when they're observed, and yet the particles themselves are potentialities. They're made of thoughts. So literally, we are the ones giving the projection onto what we'll call an other, but it's coming from us. We're creating it. So, with that amazing gift, how would you use that gift? Would you use it to judge, label, analyze, use one of the five types of, let's call it forgiveness, or would you do it differently? And I think that's the question that piqued my interest when I saw that Sid, in the missing link, he basically said on page 117, love and forgiveness go hand in hand. Without them, life is encumbered by ill feelings and unhappiness. Now, this unhappiness, this ill feeling, the word I use, and it helps me, and I'm hopefully it'll help others, is that idea of guilt, assigning guilt, and that doesn't feel good. But at a deeper level, when we're not conscious of it, we're not raising that level of consciousness, which is one of the three P's. We tend to not have that understanding. And in that same page, Sid does state, love and understanding harmonize the mind of humanity to its true inner nature. So when I'm now open to see more, perhaps this understanding of the principles, that mind, thought, consciousness dynamic, they're harmonizing, all for the purpose of truly existing, experiencing that state of love, or what Sid might call that happy feeling, that place of ease and stillness. And yet these are beautiful concepts to try to use human languaging and knowledge and big words on what is love and all those things. And I'm not sure if that's what's needed. I think that might even go beyond the words we say. So I just love how Sid says just know it's that feeling. But I do like to offer more coaching on just what is it that gets in the way, and perhaps that level of wanting to learn and listen so that we have that understanding that goes beyond human understanding is what this very simple practice is all about. Again, I know our hearts many times are trying to offer a state of grace, or we think that by offering someone forgiveness, we're extending grace. And yet, is that grace based on this very self-important, self-preserving premise, which tends not to be very gracious? It has a mask. It's not really it, because it doesn't feel good. There's something that just doesn't feel right. But when we're coming from a place where we're basing, or our premise is coming from that quiet, that stillness, that place that doesn't need to think or analyze or diagnose, what is that type of grace? What is that feeling? And I think that's where our bodies, this physical form, is a wonderful barometer. It is definitely in the form field. It is definitely part of the egoic construct that the body and our senses are still, based on judgment. We still have this ability to interpret. But there's also this beautiful, pure consciousness. Some would call it a unified consciousness that aligns with that inner, that stillness. And when you touch on it and you experience it, you know it. And so I can so see why Sid would just go, don't listen to my words. He would always say, go beyond my words, because just sit there and absorb and listen. And I'm kind of encouraging you to do that too with me if you can. I've probably just over fed my brain many times with a bunch of data. But my heart is there. I've tasted of, I've had glimpses more and more so of this beautiful knowing, but it goes beyond my human understanding. And it really is what has set me free, the freedom to not have to do so much, to defend so much, to blame and project so much. Because what I've been doing is trying to get that guilt and that sense that I've done something, I don't know something, and then I don't even know I'm doing it when, and when I don't know I'm doing it. Thank goodness for people like Sid and other mystical wisdom writers, is that we get to see, oh, I just had a misunderstanding. My 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 psychological innocence, that part of me um, that sort of came here into this earth field with, and as Sid would say, at the minute we were born, contaminated thinking. He did talk about decontaminating ourselves, and the beauty though is that the decontamination is available. It's here and waiting for us. And the only thing I think we need to do is just be ready and willing. Just be open to just looking in that direction, and then being willing to look at, sometimes maybe talk about with groups like this, how we have been using our thinking, not to judge ourselves, but to bring it to the light that doesn't judge, that open spaciousness that just feels really good. And and that's what meditation and many of these beautiful practices we have available to us. If it's gardening for you, if it's knitting, if it's just sitting in a hot bathtub or something, wonderful. If it's cooking, great. If you do like all the hand mudras and the mantras, why not? You know, there's so many different options. I just enjoy sometimes just sitting here with a nice cool glass of water and just sit here and do nothing, and return to that place where, I like Sid's description, it's to the place of original thought, where there is no need to judge or analyze or compare or compete or keep track of, scorekeeping. It's that blank slate. And yet I observe in myself, it's kind of a fun, I'll call it teaching, to notice when I start to go, yeah, yeah, but, and oh, but yeah, accept this and accept that. And then I remember to laugh. I remember to say, oh, okay. I started going into that old pattern that I know very well. And that's partly the reason I did bring up some of the ways we might have used it before. But then I now have this. And this has come into my personal awareness. The three principles has just been an absolute simple yet deeply profound path, description of this knowing. And that's all it is. It's not a technique, which I really enjoy, uh, because coming from the clinical background, it's not a therapy. It's not trying to fix you or trying to get you to do better steps. It's actually revealing and bringing to the light how that was actually what we used to do to ourselves. And that's what we forgot to remember, that we didn't have that we forgot how perfect, whole, and complete we really are. How all of this stuff, this enlightenment we're chasing, is already here. And it's funny, it's experienced and tasted of in that stillness, in that silence, in that space between my words. That spaciousness is what so many of the mystics, Rumi and Hafiz and such, they talked about years ago, about that field. And there is a field, I'll meet you there. Sid was talking about the same thing. This is a timeless truth. And yet, our thinking brain, that gift we have, boy, oh boy, has that become quite clever. Um, that that use of it to be self-important, and with our innocence, our cry for love, to try to defend ourselves, then feel guilty at some unconscious level, and then project that blame onto somebody else, and then demand forgiveness or demand restitution. You see the game, you see the cycle that we put ourselves into. The clarity, though, that we have totally accessible to us when we do, perhaps let's just say, lay down those tools that we might have acquired over time. That's just it, over time. That beautiful little thing called time that we tend to use to collect a lot of clutter, a lot of mind clutter, a lot of education, a lot of degrees, all the things that um, I personally fell for a while. And I started to see that all of that scorekeeping and data collecting, I didn't feel that peaceful, happy feeling. I noticed when I just literally let it go. There's a cute little movie on Frozen. Let it go, let it go. It's that. I kind of live the movie Frozen, um, in my ability to forgive. But it's not me efforting here. This is what's really cool, is that I'm resting in a guidance, in a stillness that feels so much better. It feels so much more calm, and continuing to just taste and dip and glimpse and hang out in that is actually what's bringing me back over and over. Sort of learned a taste for it. And I got to tell you, initially, it was a little strange to go, wait a minute, you're saying I'm not supposed to have these boundaries and these, you did this to me. That was a tough one for me to go, well, how could then being defenseless and not all armored up be healthy? Well, you'd realize after, I would say, just being willing to go into that still place, you start to realize that this place of knowing who and what you are, what you're connected to, gives you a sense of peace and safety that surpasses all of that human planning, all that human armoring and clever thinking. And that's where I personally experienced a new life, a new turn. It's actually what gave me the ability, I'll call it, the courage to not analyze people any longer, not invest in that. And that's a personal shift for me. I'm not saying that, if others are doing that, it's not wrong, but it's what I felt. I wanted to be all in. I wanted to go all in with this. And this devotion, I'll call it, this beautiful just companionship, connection. There's nothing like it. I just keep wanting to point out what that is, but it defies knowing how to do it. The how isn't there. And that's actually the good news. Um, but if we can just see what we do as humans, once we get here in our contaminated thinking, what that how that unfolds and what the progression, the natural progression of that is, and it's very freeing. And as a result, now I start to take more, I'll call it authority, agency, responsibility for my state of mind. But the responsibility is only that I choose. My free will is to choose that path. That's the free will that I have. I just get to choose it. And I have to say, if I could go real deep in this, I kind of think the person I call Isabel, the human personal thinker Isabel, didn't have anything to do with the choosing. If I were still in, just operating in the personal Isabel all the time, she wouldn't be choosing. And so that's where I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Whatever we're tapping into, whatever you want to call it, I call it that most of the time. That is such an amazing, carrying, breathing, guiding presence. And you can only talk about your experience of it usually. It's hard to give it a name or an exact formula, but it just does ask or offer, should I say, with many wisdom texts, and the missing link is one of the, I think, the most profound ones available to us. It gives us sort of a manual. Just to, oh, here, just read, kind of here, just start with this. And that's why, I do have all of probably Sid's books available. I've found them, and some of them, oh my goodness, the prices I've paid for some of these books are kind of funny. I just laugh. But my curiosity factor was I had to collect all the books and gobble, gobble, gobble. But it's always the same truth. And I do teach usually out of the missing link, because it's just nugget after nugget, pointing out concepts of the past. Sid was just so profound, and when he saw it that the past um, doesn't really exist, and that's a hard one. And I want to be really sensitive and knowing, just sharing that I'm not here to dismiss someone's past, to saying whatever happened, and they still remember what happened, is not painful. But there is an opportunity to just explore, when you're ready, that that past doesn't have to continue to exist now. It's like having a corpse of some sort handcuffed to your ankle, and you're going to drag it around with you, and you're going to base your now and then your future based on, in a sense, what you're carrying with you. And so I kind of don't want to carry things with me. I like to travel light, and not have all the baggage, that allows for that clarity. It's sort of like, decluttering the house sometimes. So I kind of collect a lot of pillows and things like that. And it feels so good sometimes to just let it loose, let it up. I don't need to hold on to these things, with my old perceiving, my old ways, that thought that would offer me protection or safety. Just trying to get some just new insights for me that have just really stood out for me. I was listening to Sid's, one of his just classic talks on the great illusion. And I think that really ties into forgiveness, in a real profound way, is that the great illusion is thinking that the world, the earth experience of being alone and separated and on your own and having to defend yourself is what we get the opportunity to awaken from. The great illusion is making all of these form created fear constructs real, that's an illusion. And yet we have this amazing creative ability to use our thinking and thoughts to create amazing illusions. And then we scare ourselves. And then we don't realize we're doing it and we don't know what to do with it out of psychological innocence. And then we project it or blame it. And then we start to perceive these others out there. And then we get enemies. We have to, draw these lines. And then we get even more scared by feeling that separation and that disconnection from that, which is really that divine mind, that divine presence. In a sense, we're having relationships and connections with ourselves. But who do we say we are? And that's the I am. I love that Sid would say, I am that which I seek. You can hear him say that in his video, The Great Illusion. And that is really realizing we're all in conversation with this divine oneness. But our personal thinking, contaminated thinking, creates these ideas of separation and other, and then perceived, you did this to me. I am now a victim. But here's where I say, I offer sensitivity and compassion. Don't go for the jugular. If you're coaching people and you're trying to share some of these things, that's not exactly the thing to just go to and say, hey, you're just making it up and it's all in your head and you're just projecting and it's not real. That tends to be a little blamey. And it's us projecting, right? And so there's this subtlety that can simply sit with someone who is perhaps still in that state. But this is where I'm going to get deep here. If you're sitting with someone who you perceive is still struggling with those 5 types of unforgiveness, and you can see it, there's a way of saying this. If you can spot it, you've got it. Okay. It's we're our projecting, because we're the ones making those experiments real. We're the ones who our expectations. Now, this is going to go deep, but imagine if you couldn't see error. What if you could not judge anyone? What if we could all do that? What if we all do have the ability to do that? That's where we actually see with the original thought, the divine mind, that is not contaminated with judging, analyzing, always needing to label, categorize. But the innocence within us is doing that desperately for safety. And so we have that understanding that is love. And I think that's why they harmonize so well. And that's what Sid was conveying to us, is that they go hand in hand. I'm trying to just offer any other new insights I've had. I think I heard him say this too, is that this understanding is what actually helps us with any psychological viruses. And it's a timeless concept about these viruses, these things that are very contagious among us, that when we start to turn to that, I'll call that true immunity, that true safety and wholeness and health and wellness. And we are those creators in the quantum where what we think actually creates those particles of potentiality, which are still in the formless, which actually then turn into form. What could we all do if, toward all of these, these psychological viruses? And Sid and most people would, in the mystical, wisdom teachings, would say all of our ills are coming from, the contaminated thinking. That's a hard one, and I always want to offer caution in that, if we're coaching people and saying that 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 can be shared sometimes without even saying words, without having to perhaps describe it as, perhaps, pardon me, clinically or psychologically as I might go. But I'm gonna just kind of share what I think I've learned, and then in the sense I'm teaching what I would learn. This is what I'm actually doing. I'm getting clearer and clearer the more I choose to look in this direction and then attempt to use these symbols called human words. Um, my heart would just go out to Sid when I would watch some of his videos, and he just, well, you people don't get it, and or I'd read some of the books on, what his he just, everybody go shopping, just leave, go somewhere and go do something. I just laugh because I see where just trying to use human words almost gets in the way. So I just wanted to just acknowledge that, and have a chuckle, kind of a holy chuckle with myself that I keep doing that. Um, the the bigger picture of then what is all of this for? What is all of this me realizing how tempted I am to make things real, to use my thinking to create potentialities of scary monsters and attacking people and enemies. What is then the, I'll call it, the blessing? What is it that happens when you just choose to choose again, where we use that second chance? It's inner peace. It's that peace that surpasses the human thinking, analyzing, judging. We get to experience that, that stillness. And that inner peace is what Sid and most every wisdom writer wrote about, was coming home. It's the name, I think, of Dickon and Natasha's recent book. But it's what Ram Dass talked about long ago, where we're all just walking each other home. Be here now, that kind of thing. It's what all the paths have been talking about, and that's what we're doing here too. And if you're listening to this podcast or this webinar later on, I hope you realize it's been divinely orchestrated for you. And the now, maybe we're recording live right now, but it's always now. And so it's, I hope you just sort of hear between the lines here, or whatever Isabel is supposedly talking about with words. It's a true experience that I have tasted of, and I want to just almost encourage anyone here, if you've got something you're holding on to perhaps a technique, or a certain label, or a personality, or an identity, or an image, or a status, play with the idea, of releasing these form created potentialities that our thinking can sort of resort to for safety, and see what it's like to kind of fly free of it. Just fly free for a while. I'm wondering if you'll ever want to come back. I didn't, and I don't even know how I could go back. That's the funny part, is I don't really remember now how to go back. But when I catch myself going into some of the old patterns, I do remember to laugh, in a, not a mocking way of others, but whatever we'll call others. But I know if I'm laughing with me in a almost a joyful remembrance, this all becomes such a kind kind practice. And it's that kindness that when we project that, when we radiate that, that's what heals. That's what is the key to a new life, a new experience of living free of the clutter, where I don't need to teach love. I don't need to teach what light is. I don't need to teach anything about what truth is and define truth. There's no need for that. I'm just getting the clutter. I'm just cleaning up all the debris, and the light and the love and the divine. It does its own stuff. It doesn't need personal Isabel. And then I realize I get to be one with it. That's the oneness. I get to be part of it all. And it is kind of funny. I still have this human, I call it my little ego bot, my human flesh suit. I still get to have that. Okay, I enjoy some good food sometimes. I enjoy some of the fun things that my senses still perceive. That's fun. But I kind of have this sense of I am what I've been seeking. Rumi did say that too. You are the love you've been looking for. And that's its own reward. So I've been talking for quite a few minutes here. Boy, how does time fly? Oh, that thing called time. If anyone would like to offer any comments, or if anything I've said is not settled well, I would love to hear that. I love to be with anyone who wants to bring to light an emotion, a thought. And let us do that together with no judgment. It's just a matter of being with each other and just hanging out in this space. And if not, I'll keep talking just for a few more minutes. And feel free, if something does come to you, feel free to come into the conversation. Not with me, but, with yourself. This is truly a gift you give yourself. And then as a result that you do give to what we'll perceive as others. But this is funny, there is no other. That's what's, these are things that just start to become more real than what I used to think was real. What I used to think was my own lone individual, all up to me, have to have good boundaries and defend and protect and make sure there was penance and payment and such. Boy, that was the old nightmare. I'm going to call it the nightmare. It was, boy, that was exhausting. It was, I just didn't feel well. And again, I love how Sid just really makes it simple, and in the way he says, just go for that happy feeling. And initially, if that's all we can do is come through it through the body, just go for the feeling, well, the body is a wonderful teacher. It's a wonderful barometer. And so that's why a lot of the yoga practices and such and all the body work is such a gift, because it helps us to come back through and up the channel, back up into our thoughts, use of our thinking, connecting with that missing link, the bridge into divine mind. I don't know about you, but when I get a foot rub or some kind of massage, oh boy, I like the path. I'm connected back into the divine. Woo! It's funny, and it's almost paradoxical that it's me having my body, touched or massaged or something, but it's powerful, and it's all a gift. This consciousness, and now consciousness of the mind, thought, consciousness, we could dissect it. We could say consciousness is the body. Well, if it is, hey, I'm all for it. I love my senses. I'm going to rock these senses, and if I got this human little flesh spot, use it. Use it as a communication device for me and for others. um, not use this device to either attack people or try to bait and attract people. I'm using it as a vessel now, but the vessel is for me, and when I serve myself, I serve others. That connection is the forgiveness, is remembering that there is no other, remembering not to make this other separated being so real and scary. That's the forgiveness that I believe Sid was talking about as well. And that is the universal truth. Nobody's owning it. It's not with one specific particular approach. It just Sid in the three principles does a great job at making it very simple and easy to see. There is an original thought, a beautiful divine mind that comes through us, through thought, and we can experience it in our consciousness, whether it be our level of understanding, our senses, our body. And then that comes right back up the loop and it serves us, and it all becomes one. It is all one. They all work together. So simple. So peaceful. And there's nothing to think about. There's nothing to analyze. Quite frankly, the less you analyze or think about these things, the more ease and simplicity, less clutter. The air is clearer. You don't have a bunch of and this thought, that thought, this thought. Oh my God, and I got to hold on to that. I got to remember this. I got to have to memorize that. No. And then you start to be really aware when you make things real. If you've got a really clean white, counter or kitchen, when there's a bug on there, you're like, wah! Now with, a cluttered kitchen, maybe like mine, I have one too many appliances, maybe here and there. But if I were to clear it, boy, oh boy, I can see so much more clearly. So I'm clearing the kitchen of my mind, the kitchen of my thinking. And then that clears a lot of open dishes and pans and such to make and create new recipes, new things to enjoy. Sid would talk about it as like trying to pour new wine into an old stale wine bottle, because you can. And that's that concept too of, a cup that's already full and thinks it knows everything and is holding on to its old stuff. It doesn't have the opportunity to see things new. But in the course of the three principles, is you learn to trust this understanding. You just gently start to trust this path, this I'll call it sort of trinity of a loop that just is all one. It feeds itself. You start to trust it more and more by testing it, by being willing to perhaps listen to these kind of webinars, engage in all of the different offerings of the three principles, the heartfelt presence, 24/7 web page that we have, the Zoom calls that are always going, this 3PCG group. I mean, it's just amazing what is offered to us, and at no charge too. It's so available and free. If you're willing just to look in this direction, that's your free will, is to test and taste of this. You have the choice to do it, and it'll happen. The good news is too, and if you're stuck, or if there's still something that just seems very unforgivable, just know that the healing is right there waiting for you. It's always available to you. And in a sense, you need do nothing. You don't have to do anything to get this. There's no getting here. That's the great mystery sometimes, is that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to remember, nothing to study, no courses to pass and master and take a test on. That's what I just love about the 3 Ps. It's free. It's available. It's waiting for you. And if you're in a place where you're stuck and there's something that you just don't want to let go of quite yet, because you're, that personal thinking, that ego mind keeps saying, nope, nope, someone's going to get you. It's not justice. Just be willing to bring that to one of our groups. Be willing just to bring that question in your heart of hearts to one of Sid's books. And just be willing to listen and wait for that encounter, that amazing feeling that you won't be able to describe with words. And test it. Test, if you can still hear my voice and you're still listening to me, go and test what I'm talking about. Because when you test it, you will taste of it. You will then learn to trust it more and more, and it will become your truth. It will be the truth that you know and understand, but not with that human, personal, analytical mind. It's such a cool thing. And then you're just free to love, truly free to love, because there's no fear. There's no more fear involved. And that's the beginning of a life that you can start anew. I'll leave you with that then today. And if there's any questions or any comments, I'm here. You can always contact me through the 3PGC website if you'd like to talk more about it. And there's a bunch of wonderful other practitioners. I mean, they're just beautiful people who are just ready and available to meet with you if this is what you're struggling with. And especially the heartfeltpresence.org website too, where there's a lot of people who are on standby 24/7, and it's free. And I don't know if there's anything like it right now, in our 2021 year here, where you could be an online Zoom. It's not a text chat program. It's an actual live person. You're live real time. So tell your friends.
Nice. Isabel, thank you so much. This was just lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. This will be available in the recording as well out on the YouTube page. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, Isabel.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.